Mazda RX-8, very fast.
Guys, let's talk about owning an RX-8 for 4 years and what that's actually like. So I owned an RX-8 for 4 years and I really did enjoy the car. It's quite an awesome car. I have sold that car now and I currently drive a Jaguar S-Type 4.0 high output engine. But let's talk about what it's like to own this RX-8, and we will explain what that's like. We'll also show you some footage and give you all the ins and outs of owning that vehicle and what it would be like to purchase one today and own it for 4 years, and then, you know, how that would be, what type of maintenance you have to do, what were the difficulties with that car, that kind of thing. So
my life to a standard, 200 odd bottle is the answer. Some I not like, some are scared to. As much as I love it, I just had to up my game, off my side.
First of all, let's talk about overall my impression of the car. It's one of the best cars I've ever had. If you know anything about me, if you've watched my channel a little bit, I really do like sports cars, and I need to have a sports car, well, because of something that happened to me back in the past. I actually was chased by some criminals once, and I needed to get away, and I didn't have a car that could do that. At the time I was in a Buick Century, believe it or not. But anyway, so I've always purchased cars that can get up and get away, you know, get up and leave the scene if there is some sort of danger. The RX-8 overall is a wonderful car. The styling of the car is fantastic. I'm going to interrupt here and show you different footage and different pictures. Interior, I don't think it's over the top. Very well done. Overall, the styling of the RX-8 is fantastic, and the body work is very pretty, I think. And as far as drivability daily, it is a very nice car to drive daily. You've got just enough space in there so that you can do what you want to do. It has a usable back seat. I actually put a very large screen TV in mine and brought it home. You can open up the back seat with this gull wing doors, which open towards the front of the car, which is really kind of cool. They're hidden doors there, so it's like the best between a coupe and a sedan. So it's quite a nice car, really. Okay, I like the styling and the seats. Now let's talk about the engine. Do not buy one of these cars if you plan to just buy the car and, you know, put gas in it and drive it. Do not buy one of these cars in that case. But if you're kind of the person who likes to tinker with things and play with things, this is a good car for you. The interesting thing about it, you're looking at a car now that was made in the year 2000 or 2003, I guess is the first year for these. And so it's getting close to 20 years old, but the materials still hold up in the car. So if you were to buy one now, a 2003 through 2008, and buy that car and own it, you're going to be impressed with the body. You're going to be impressed with the materials. You're going to be impressed with the way the seats are still in good condition. You're also going to be impressed with the way the paint looks usually. If it's been well kept, the paint can hold up. The body will not rust either. That's another thing. So overall, the car is very, very nice. How it feels to drive, it feels a lot like a Miata with a very different engine and a lot more top speed. It is incidentally one of the cars that I have gone the fastest I've gone in my life. Mine was a German spec version, and it had no governor on it. And the engine has plenty of power. I did go 279 kilometers an hour. and that translates to just shy of 200 miles an hour. So the car is wonderful, very powerful. Let's talk about that. As it climbed in speed, what I ended up noticing is that it had plenty of power, but it was actually running out of gear. And then when I stopped, it was actually still climbing slowly, but still climbing, but it was running out of gear.
A lot of cars do not do this well, but this car, they must have done wonderful wind tunnel testing on it. The low front end, the low nose of the car actually pushes it down and holds it to the road very good. You have good contact with the road, and there's no danger of it flying off the road. It really feels very well connected.
If I'm not condoning you guys do these kind of things, make sure, absolutely sure, that you're very sure of the car and also the road that you're going to be doing it on. Don't do it as a stupid person, because you can kill yourself easily with this. So, look, guys. Anyway, so when you put your brakes on at that speed, even with these high-rated racing brakes that are on the RX-8, it does not do a whole lot at those speeds. So don't expect to stop quickly, and you don't even want to. What you would do is slowly brake down and slowly bring it under control, mostly by just letting it coast into that with a little bit of brake applied. You certainly don't want to hold on the brakes hard, and then you'd overheat them, and then they wouldn't work at all, and or very little. It would called brake fade, and you don't want that. So, okay. So the engine has a lot of power in it. Now, what I did notice is it is low end, not so much. Although it's torquey enough to pull you, and it pulls off the line okay. When it gets into the higher RPMs is really when it starts to pull. And you know, my car was quick. It only pulled a 4 on the G meter.
Okay, you can see it's marked here in red. It's a 4, but actually it's a 0.4 G. You might want to pause this and take a look. Look at the Porsche, fastest one.
0.4, so 0.4 of a G at its best point. But that's not telling the whole story. That's only telling maximum acceleration. What more tells the story is how it plays out through the first gear. And I would win many drag races in that car. So, you know, it was able to pull out and actually stay in first gear much longer than most cars. It redlined at 9. So, there you go. Let's talk about what else. Body. No rust. 0 rust. And as long as you're smart with this, if you get a piece of paint knocked off or whatever, you take care of it. My paint always looked beautiful. The body always looked nice. So no rust issues, not underneath or on the car. And we're talking about, I live in a very harsh environment here in Russia. It's kind of the worst, really, as far as the water and all that shit. So no rust. And let's talk about other things. Let's talk about interior switches and electrical. 0 problems. 0 problems. That car works perfectly. There is no issues at all with like windows not working, or even the clutch in the thing. You know, it's a manual. Get a manual. Don't even bother with the automatic unless you just can't find anything else. But try to look for the manual. You're going to get more horsepower, and the manual transmission is so sweet on that car. So very sweet little throws, very short throws, very sweet little throws. Look, so seriously, the manual transmission, the clutch, it just never is an issue in that car. You don't have to worry about it. Unless somebody's burned it. You know, if you do your normal clutch checks when you're buying the car, it's going to stay pretty much like that through the whole time that you're owning it. So, and the transmission, 0 problems. And, you know, window switches, air conditioning, all of this stuff, heated seats, everything, going to work for you, not going to break. That's one of the beauties of buying something Japanese, right? So those are my impressions. Very much like a Miata, with the shifter is perfect perfect transmission. It does have a lot of Miata parts in there, so if you're owning one, look for Miata parts, and then if you can't find the RX-8 parts, because they're going to be more expensive sometimes. So look for the Miata parts, because a lot of the stuff in there is Miata. But of course the engine is very different. You cannot start that car and not let it warm up and shut it right off. And there's also other things around this same idea. So basically, it dumps a lot of gas in the car when you're starting it, and things are not warmed up enough to burn it out, and therefore you can get a flooded condition. The way to resolve that is to rev the car to about 3,000 RPMs and then turn the key off. So you're going to rev it to about 3,000 RPMs. Well, this is not the RX-8, but you're going to rev it to about 3 and then shut the key off without letting the foot off the gas. And that literally will let the engine spin around and push the extra gas out of the car. I did that almost every time I stopped the engine. It helps because you don't, in this car, let me tell you honestly, in this car, the RX-8, there is a lot of gas left over due to the design of the engine. There's a lot of gas left over in that rotor housing because of the design of it, more than in a piston engine. So what's happening is, if you don't let it spin after you shut the key off, you shut the key off, shuts off the ignition, and it spins around a couple more times, it's shooting the gas out of the exhaust. If that doesn't happen, the gasoline tends to mix with the oil over time, and you end up with a diluted oil solution. It won't really hurt anything unless it got to really a crazy kind of mixture, then it could ignite or something. But in general, it just would dilute the effectiveness of your oil. So this is very important to know. You have to change your oil all the time. See what I mean by tinkering? So when you stop it, you can't just shut it off and get out. You have to rev it and turn it off. You have to make sure that it's warmed up before you turn it off. If you turn it off, I have moved it to wash it, where I would start it, drive it a little bit, and then immediately turn it off, but I would do the revving cycle. And that tended to work. That worked. So, I knew my car pretty well. But towards the end of the life of the car, I did notice that I was having trouble starting when hot. And that's the key. That's the key to when the apex seals are starting to really go. I got a high-speed starter motor, which is the next thing you do, and that allowed it to start better. But still, I was still having this trouble where I had to wait for it to cool until it started. I had to wait for it to cool down before it could develop the compression to start. Tinkering with the car, just exactly what I'm saying. So the point is, if you're going to buy one, expect these kind of issues. Unless it's a brand new rebuilt engine, then you'd probably be okay for around 100,000 miles. But if you're buying one used and the miles are whatever they are, you're going to need to understand that you need to take care of it. Use the additive in your gas. Rev it before you shut it off. I never lost any horsepower. The car always was very powerful and pulled wonderfully when it was running. At the end there, I sold it because I just started to see that problem with the apex seals. It not developing compression when warm. So I ended up selling it, and I don't know what the guy did with it, but I saw him driving it later. So anyway, I owned it for 4 years. It was a good car. It was what I would consider to be one of my best cars that I've owned in my life. So I hope this helps.
Another thing I will tell you is to absolutely pull your cats off of the exhaust if you live in a country that will allow you to do so. Look at my rotor here as my oil cover. Yeah, so that creates less back pressure and allows the engine to work longer. It also gives you a much better bottom end. I got at least 10 horsepower out of that by yanking the cats off. So do that. Look at that style.
And let's talk about the other point. So the only thing as far as maintenance goes, I had an oil leak one time in the oil cooler line. I had to fix that. Of course, I change my oil all the time, you know, like every 6 months at least, and I kept it clean. And I use conventional oil in that car. Conventional oil, whatever you can find. You cannot use synthetic because it burns part of that oil. And when it does that, it will literally crystallize as in the burning process and cut the cylinder, or well, not cylinder, cut the the housing around the rotor, right? So you know, that would be detrimental for the engine. It crystallizes and becomes something hard as it's burning synthetic, according to what I've read. And everybody says you can't use synthetic oils, so don't use synthetic oils. What else? So as far as everything else in the car, I would say perfect. Perfect for my taste. Some people don't like the styling in the RX-8, but I liked it. I liked the modern looking dash and this beautiful changes of color and things like all this stuff they're doing in that car before they did in others. So I really enjoyed all that. You could drive it on a long trip. It's okay. It's comfortable. It's big enough inside to be comfortable. I will say that if you ever were trying to get with a girl in that car, it's going to be a little bit tight. It's a small car. There's not much space. What else? Okay, so body work, no rust, no problems with anything. Basically, as far as I'm concerned, owning the car for 4 years, I had to do no work to the body, no work to the interior, like, you know, fixing little crap. The only thing I had to worry with is I constantly had to tinker with the engine as far as like when you add, when you put gas in the car, you have to add the oil, which I got tired of doing that, to be honest with you. Changing the oil all the time. Oh, here's the other important point. Every time I stop and get gas, I put, well, they make a squeeze bottle for this stuff, which is the easiest way to work with it. And so you're going to squeeze the bottle, bring up into the little cup the amount that you're going to put in, and then you add it into the gas. And I would put about a full cup of that stuff in my tank of gas I was putting in, maybe slightly more than a full tank. I might put a full cup and then a little bit more because I figured it was a little bit better protection. I drove the car for 4 years. I drove it a lot, all over. Now I know that sounds weird and you're probably like, why would I need to do that? But I will try to explain to you. The 2-cycle engine oil drastically increases the longevity of the apex seals in the engine. So I'm going to show you some slides here and stuff. So there are apex seals in this engine. Now, if you know anything, if you've been following my channel, yes, I was a car dealer for many years there. I owned a dealership and sold, well, I've owned and purchased about 1,400 cars in my life, and actually owned and driven 1,400 cars. A lot of them were not what I consider to be my personal car. Those are only special cars, but all of them I drove, and all of them I drove and sold. So 1,400 cars. So what you're looking at here is the triangle in the engine of the rotary engine. There are apex seals in there, and there are also seals on the side of the triangle of this rotor. Okay, there's seals on the side. Mostly it's the apex seals that give the trouble, especially in this new Renaissance engine. So, but if you just put gas in it and go with the oil that they ask you to put in the car, it will wear rather rapidly. About 100,000 miles you'll have to do an engine rebuild. But if you do this 2-cycle engine oil adding, it will increase the longevity a lot more. So that's something to know. Also, you cannot put synthetic oil in it. That's another thing. So what I mean is the car has a lot of high-tech stuff on there, and that is one thing I very much appreciate about the RX-8, is it's very high-tech.